The sport of off-road racing is full of incredible stories, wild characters, legends, and even villains. We cover it all on offroadracer.com, but there's only so much we can put down in an article. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, and that means sitting down with some of our industry's most influential characters and hitting record. Welcome to the Off-Road Racer podcast, a Mad Media production, made exclusively for offroadracer.com. Each month, we'll go beyond the dirt into the homes, shops, and lives of the most interesting and game-changing icons of our sport. You'll hear about their history, success, failure, and everything in between as we pull back the curtain and reveal the stories of their lives. I'm your host, Matt Martelli, and this is the Off-Road Racer podcast. I'm Matt Martelli. This is the Off-Road Racer podcast, and I'm here with my good friend, Sara Price, one of the baddest women on the planet, by the way. What's up, Sara?
What's up, guys? I don't know, the baddest woman on the planet? I wouldn't claim that.
Well, listen, if I had won a stage in Dakar, I'd have like a big thing like Flavor Flav around my neck that said like, I won this stage X, right?
Right, I know. That was badass. I have to say that.
Yeah. I mean, what did that feel like? I mean, that had to have been surreal. You know, you go over there as a privateer and like nobody's expecting you to do well. Like the expectation really was like, cool, it's her first year. She's going to go over there and see how it goes, right?
Yeah, no, just getting there was really just surreal. You know, it's a lot of effort to get to Dakar, especially as an American. And then when we won the stage, I wasn't trying to win the stage. That's the funny thing is like, I never went out there and was like, I want to have a stage win. I was always looking at the bigger picture and the longevity of it. Like, hey, I want to be on the podium at Dakar. Like, I didn't even put in my head, like I had the possibility to win it. And then yet I was in that position and it was just really wild. But stage 10, we just had a really clean run. And we were just able to keep up our pace all day. And then we finished and we're like, no way. We just won the stage, I think. Like, that's crazy. And you never really know because with the FIA, there's all these penalties and things that always happen and come up later. And, you know, it's really hard to have a clean day. So you kind of wait till you get back to the bivouac. And then you're like, all right, is it for real? Did any penalties happen? And then all of a sudden it's real.
Did that day feel like good to you? Did it feel clean to you? Did you come into the bivouac going like, that was a really good day?
100%. Yeah, we were able just to stay on pace. And, you know, sometimes you have some upsets. You're either like, unsure. You're not sure which way you're going. You might get lost a little bit or you might have an issue. You know, I think there's so much that goes into a race like Dakar that's so long and so many things can happen. Like, you can be as prepared as possible and something stupid could happen that's totally out of your control. So all you can do is kind of be as prepared as possible and do everything you can to not let the stupid things happen. And so, yeah, it was a clean day. Nothing stupid happened. And, you know, we ended up winning it, which was awesome. And, you know, ironically, it was stage 10 and it was towards the end and it helped us out. But yeah, for me, you know, we were in a podium spot and then stage 12, it all kind of went to shambles for me. But
tell us that story.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty like everyone's like, why were you so bummed at the finish line? I'm like, I know I shouldn't be because this is Dakar and I just finished it. But going into stage 12, I was sitting second and third. So first, second, third were pretty close. And the guy who was winning, he had a 20-minute lead on us who were in second and third. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to basically drive around, keep it all together. I'm going to get a podium at Dakar. Well, then I get to the fuel stop. And someone mentioned Team Polaris got penalized. And I was like, that was the team that was beating me. And I was like, oh my gosh, they got penalized 20 minutes. Like I'm 20 minutes out of the lead right now. And so I looked at Jeremy and I was like, we got to go in the car right now. I was like, what do you think we should do? You think we should push and try to go for the win right now? I was like, or do we play it safe and we get a podium? And he's like, I think we should go for the win. I was like, me too. So, yeah, we went for it and it didn't work out. Ended up breaking all kinds of things. And yeah, I thought I lost the whole Dakar right then and there on that stage. And, I don't know if I regret it. I didn't know what I was feeling or thinking, but it's kind of like you make it through this whole thing, and to the second to last day, you lose it. And you're just like, what did I just do? And you're thinking of your decisions and you're kind of going back. And, I don't regret it now after the fact, after I've absorbed it. I've talked to a lot of people, and it's like, I'm a racer. I want to go for the win. And it didn't work out this time, but what if it did work out? How cool would have that been? And do I wish I still got the podium? That took me off the podium. I ended up 4th in Dakar this year, but that was my first year. So it's like, I can't be that bummed, but I am bummed I didn't get on the podium still. So that was a bummer, but, I lost the podium by going for the win.
Do you think that's part of being an American racer versus being a European racer?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think I think we push harder in ways in America. We push harder in longer periods, I feel like, than Europeans. Maybe they're used to, like, I guess, taking care of the equipment, not hitting things as hard as we are, I think. But I don't know if it's necessarily any different, to be honest. It's just we are used to rugged terrain here, in America. But I'm not kidding you. Like, I have never seen rocks like they have there. Like, people are like, I'm trying to describe it to people. I'm like, we have round rocks that have been rolled over for many years, and they aren't pointy. They aren't lava. It's like there, you're just on straight pumice stone, and there's no dirt around it in sight. Like, you're just on rocks, like, skating around, and they're sharp as can be. Like, I've never seen something like that in my life. And so the terrain is definitely brutal over there. It's stuff that's untouched, and it doesn't have any wear on it.
Well, what comes to mind for me is, like, the idea of team orders, right? From European race teams of, like, they're very measured in their approach, and, they seem to not care about winning with big gaps. They want to win by a second. And I know that's a generalization, but, like, when you grow up in a racing environment where it's like, you have this idea of team orders of, like, the goal is to support this racer. And if you have the shot to go around him, you don't do that. You let him take that position.
Yeah.
Because at some point you're going to graduate to position 1, and then you'll have people behind you supporting you. We don't really do that in America. In America, it's like, it's a little bit more savage, every man for himself or every woman for herself. So I just wonder, because, again, same thing, like, you had this experience in Extreme E, which is also a very, like, kind of team order sport, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, you went out there and you had some pretty good results. But I'm just curious as to if that was another instance of where, the American style of, like, we're here to win doesn't jive with what they want.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It is, going to Europe and racing is so different than what we have here. So, like, how I always compare it is, in American off-road, we are the Wild Wild West, right? It's like the FIA is strict, and there is a lot of rules, and the rules and how they're written, they can kind of choose what they want to make them in that moment. And I feel like the Europeans have that so dialed. They understand it a lot more than we do. And yeah, there's water boys almost on every successful team. And that is because you need that. You need that support. And that is something that, coming there as an American and as a privateer, I didn't have that. I didn't have that ability. And, I was talking to friends like Casey Curry and people who've had so much success. He won it. And he's like, man, he goes, do you have water boys? Do you have anyone who's going to be out there to support you? And I'm like, no, I can't afford that. I'm like, so we're going to have to just do the best we can. And, we made a lot of friends out there, though, too. So when things don't go right and you have those alliances and you have people that maybe didn't have good beginning stages and they're kind of out of the rally, they now let the cars continue in the adventure class, it's called, so they can get experience and not just be out. Which, there's a lot of opinions about that. It's kind of like, yeah, you spend a lot of money to go there, and if you're out the first stage, that sucks. But that also is what makes Dakar Dakar.
Sure.
And since they changed that rule, it's kind of been this weird thing. People don't know if they agree or don't, But yeah, it's crazy. I didn't have that ability to have the support of a water boy, but we did what we could.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, let's talk about your background a little bit, because I think it's interesting. Most people don't know your moto background, right? Talk a little bit about how you got started in off-road racing.
So I actually was into horseback. So I did anything and everything on a horse. Even did gymnastics. It was called vaulting. But my dad always thought, like, these horses are crazy. They're so scary. Like, we need to get her in a dirt bike, I guess. And so...
Because a dirt bike is less scary.
Exactly.
Right.
And so he raced Class 10 cars at the time. And so, I've always been around the off-road scene. And my brother was racing dirt bikes. And our neighbor was Josh Grant right down the road. So that's how he got into it. And then my parents didn't know what to do with me. I had too much energy, so they got me a XR50, and I would go to the track with my brother, and I'd just do laps on the Pee Wee track until the bike ran out of gas, come in for gas, go back out, and I wouldn't get off that dirt bike. Then someone told my dad, like, hey, you need to bring Sara to a race. She's actually really good. Did my first race and won it. And so it was kind of like I was just hooked, and I've always been that big energy ball and fearless kid. So I just wanted to keep going, and that's what we did. We went to the nationals, won the first national, and my dad said, I'll support you as long as you put 1,000,000% into this. Like, it's going to be hard, and you're going to have grit with you on this whole process. Like, we're not just going to hand it to you and make it, for you. So I did everything I could to make the best out of it, and, turn professional at 16 years old. Was the first Monster Energy factory Kawasaki female racer. And we medaled in X Games. We had a killer career on two wheels, But in the end, there wasn't a light at the end of the tunnel. There's no future to be made there. There's no, I couldn't pay any, rent at an apartment by racing dirt bikes. And that's kind of gnarly to think about, the lack of support.
Especially for the physical demand on the racers. Like I don't know. I mean, besides MMA,
yeah,
I don't know of a sport that's more physically demanding than moto.
100%. And that's the thing. Like, you can't have a job and race a dirt bike and be your best.
No.
Like, there's no way, because you're just it's not if, it's when you get hurt on a dirt bike, and you just hope it's not a bad one when it happens, because it's going to happen. Yeah.
I mean, it's the adage of with age comes a cage, but it's also this weird thing of like, so many moto athletes wash out, and, for a lot of them, there's really not a plan B,
No.
So, I mean, I hope more of those guys and gals look at off-road racing and go, hey, I can race UTVs. I can have a career here, and actually, have financially, make some money. And even if you have to work, it's something that I think it's definitely less physically demanding than racing outdoors, or even supercross, even gnarlier, right?
Yeah.
But still, it's a path to extend their career. And, I think then this would be a question. I kind of already know the answer, but do you think your time in moto gave you an advantage in off-road racing?
1,000,000%. I think having the moto background and what it sets you up for in anything, and also in any sort of racing, you have such an edge, like, especially in off-road, because I know how to read terrain. And like, on two wheels, it was really funny because every single day I'm working at it, right? Like, I'm at the track, I'm working on skill set, I'm doing motos, I am in the gym, like, it's this whole training thing going on every single day. You don't miss a day. Then I went to cars, and I kind of was like, so how do you like properly drive through the corner? Like, isn't there a process? And no one could really totally tell me. It was always like, go out there and just figure it out and feel it. And I just was like, it's so different than moto, because it's not like you're training every day at it, and no one really does that. And so I constantly was just trying to ask around anyone and everyone to get any knowledge on how to properly drive, or like how to be faster. And, there's like key points in my driving career, I feel like, where I like put those things together from like little words of advice from people I collected it from.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I think moto, it's, just like you said, like when I basically retired off 2 wheels, I was like, all right, number one, I'm going to tell myself is I am going to figure something out to put a roof over my head. And as long as I can put a roof over my head, I'll spend all the rest of my money to go race 4 wheels. And so that's what I did. I started an auto paint business, bought a house, bought a side-by-side, and then I started racing again. And I was satisfied because, like, no matter what, I'm going to be a racer till I'm probably 80 years old. And as long as I'm racing and getting that fix, that's all I care about because that's just what I'm a racer.
Now, when you started racing UTVs, right? Like you had some pretty quick success. And I remember, people being kind of shocked. Because again, they're looking at you as a woman and they didn't understand you came from Moto, which I don't know. You tell me, like, after having that experience and going through that and like X Games and everything else, then you're like, cool, I'm going to do a UTV race. It's not intimidating.
No. I think it coming from 2 wheels to 4 wheels, it's not as intimidating at all. You have a cage. You kind of like on a dirt bike, you get hurt, right? Don't get me wrong, you get hurt in a car too, but you have less of a chance of getting hurt. And so you can kind of send it, flip a few times and be like, all right, well, what do we have to do to go back out there? It's not like a broken arm or a broken leg. But yeah, it's different, but that's what makes it so much fun because you can do other things in your life instead of be 24/7 dedicated to only that, like to be able to race cars, you have to have fun, right? So I had the business and I was able to actually run that business and then provide my racing for myself. And on a dirt bike, I couldn't do that because then I wouldn't succeed in racing on a dirt bike.
Right.
But you can in a car, and that's pretty cool.
Well, and I think the other thing to talk about too is like the aging out process in Moto starts a lot quicker.
Yeah.
It happens a lot quicker than it does in a car. I mean, you look at Rossler and I'm like, man, like the dude's in his 70s and he's still spanking all the kids, right? Yeah. So I think that's a, kind of an interesting thing as well. Did you, as you started climbing up the ranks in UTV racing, did you think like, okay, wow, like maybe I have a whole nother, a whole nother chapter to my career here?
Moto's gnarly. Like, and I think that is the funny thing, like people seen me transfer into 4 wheels and, do well pretty fast. But the motocross and what you get put through to be a professional racer on 2 wheels, it takes you to a whole nother level as a person. Dedication, drive, mental strength, and it's not for the wimps. Like, and so when you get into a car, you don't have to, it's not as gnarly on you as a athlete. It's just more of a figuring it out and having the mental part. And then that's where, mental came from motocross for me. And I think it's always been in me, though. It's kind of like I always call it's a flip of a switch. If my arm's falling off, I'd still would never give up type of thing.
Well, it's true. I mean, I've seen you in the men racing trucks as well. And that's what people don't understand the how difficult it is, the intensity level. Of like you're going through this really intense experience and you're going to be doing it for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like lots of other forms of racing where you're like 30-minute moto, maybe an hour moto. Okay, that was wild. Well, we've got 5 more hours of that, right?
Yeah.
So, I've seen that kind of drive, but back to Dakar, because Dakar is really a very different type of racing because the grind is so gnarly. I had Ricky on the podcast a little while ago, and we were talking about like, not just the racing, but then the transit stages every day. Like, oh, now we got to drive 2 hours or an hour or whatever it is.
Or 7.
Yeah, to the bivouac before you can then rest, right? So like, and it's monotonous. It's like highway driving or whatever, or long dirt trails. So, I think it's really a next level thing to go from like, cool, I've been racing in America. I've been doing a few hundred miles a day. Now I'm going to do a few hundred miles a day for 14 days.
Yeah.
I could tell you, like, just going over and spectating it, and I'm used to long distance driving. and we are just, driving a car on the highway and chasing in. And then at the end of the day, I was like, Jesus, right? And then after 5 or 6 days of that, I'm like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
Like we're going back. We're gonna hop on the plane and fly actually back to Spain and screw around. But what was that grind like for you?
Yeah, it is it's a wild experience. It's like I always compare it to like it'd be like the Mitt 400 every day, right? In a way. And then also add the liaison. And so what the liaison is, like there is one stage, I think we had like a 6 to 8 hour liaison. We had to go, I think it was like 400 miles. That's a side-by-side on the highway. Like, I don't drive a side-by-side on the highway at all anyways. And then you're just like, this seems so weird and odd. And then I'm driving it further, like from me going to the river to Glamis, it's like, this is wild that this is even happening. We're not even starting the race though. So that's under time and you can't mess up. Obviously, like if something dumb happened to your car and you miss your start time, then you get penalized. So you don't want to do that either. So you have to be on your A game. You're still using a road book, but you have to get there within a certain time, and then your time will actually start for the race. So when you see, 51 hours, I think is what Ricky finished it in, and he won this year. But you don't see all the other time, which it's probably that long, plus I would times it by 2 at least.
It'd be interesting to do that, like, and go, okay, here's the race time. Right, but here's the time you're in the race vehicle, right?
Exactly.
That'd be pretty bonkers. Because again, that's a thing that's kind of hidden.
Yeah.
But it was one of the things that I noticed when we were there, because we were following that year was Mitchie in the liaisons, right?
Yep.
And basically along the highway in Saudi, probably breaking every law, filming them and whatever. But
Dude, they're crazy on the road over there, though. Like,
psycho.
There's like cars that hit race cars, and like they're going like 100 right by you off the highway. You're just like, what the heck? So you got to pay attention too when you're on those highways. Like, but I'm in the car in Dakar. I would say like on average, 10 to 12 hours a day, easy. Yeah. So like that's normal. It's crazy that that's just an everyday thing.
Yeah, that's wild. What was your, for you, what was your favorite part of Dakar?
That you got to start over every day and do it again.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have a bad day, you have a good day. That is the hardest thing, I think, about Dakar is what the racers go through emotionally. And because you can have a good day and you're on a high, right? Then the next is a bad day and you're on a low. And then you have to always pick yourself back up and start over the next day. And to me, that was my favorite part, is that, okay, whatever happened today, I can now put behind me and I can try and do it even better tomorrow.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, that's got to be, an incredible mind game, because again, like you were talking about this mental tenacity that you develop with Moto, because of, how it just breaks your body down physically, and you physically want to quit, and you're like, I'm done, right? Like everything hurts, maybe you just laid the bike down and crashed or whatever, but the race isn't over. Like you got to get up and fight your way back, and it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting thing to me, of like how you then do that for 14 days.
Yeah. Yeah. At X Games one year, I popped my shoulder out. It was when I was doing enduro cross. Popped my shoulder out, got off the track. The EMT was there, and it was like I had dislocated my shoulder before, and usually I can pop it back in pretty simply. But this time it was really stuck, and so like I was asking the EMT lady to like help me right on the side of the track, and I was like, it's fine, I'll just step on it with my foot. So like I stepped on my arm and pulled it and popped it back in, and then I got back on the track and then still finished the race. Like I couldn't move my arm after at all, but like it's just that mental thing when you want to do something and you just tell yourself you're gonna do it, you just do it. And so like, I've had a really well-known off-road racer call me, and he was thinking about doing, he was about to do the Ironman at Baja 1000. And I was really blown away. He was calling me because I had done it in 2019, but I just was like, he kept thinking so hard about it and wanted to create this plan and a training regimen. And I was just like, dude, I think you're thinking too hard about it. You just have to do it. Like, there's no like, yeah, you can prepare for it for sure. Like do that, but like don't put it in your head like, but this or should I do this? It's just like, no, I'm doing it. There's no changing this. And it's just that's the best way to go into anything, I think, race related.
Well, I think that's something you develop through experience, right?
Yeah.
It's like in martial arts, everybody gets confused about the whole board breaking thing as like some macho act. And it's not. What it is, it's mind over matter. It's you being able to tell your mind, right, that you can do that. When physics says if you hit your hand with a brick, it's going to break your hand, not the brick, right?
Yeah.
But yet people do it, and you've seen them do it, and you know that it's possible. So I think like once you have those experiences, then your threshold for being able to, accomplish certain things like racing for 14 days, like then you become, you start operating on a higher level, right?
Yeah.
So like, of course he's going to hyper analyze everything because he probably only has ever driven a few hundred miles, right?
Yeah.
So doing 1,000 plus during a race, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I totally agree. I think, just if you really want something, you just got to do it. And that's one thing, it was just really mind blowing because I kind of was like, man, like, you out of all people, like, just do it, man. Like, you got this. Like, you're calling little old me.
Well, but I also think that speaks to the idea of, of strength and how off-road racing is, really an equalizer where, sure, you want to have big muscles and, be the cool guy, that's flexing his biceps when he gets out of the car and all that stuff. But like, when you really look at, does that buy you wins? It doesn't, right? Like when you look at the physical attributes of drivers, who are successful with off-road racing, they're generally not big muscular people.
Yeah.
Like, sure, there's times where like you got to sling a 40-inch tire around, or your steering's broken and what have you. And there is physical fatigue, don't get me wrong, but like this is one of those sports, where you in particular could overall a race.
Yeah. No, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter your fitness level to an extent. I think fitness is important in a vehicle because one, when your fitness starts to go, what's going to go next? Your mental.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't have to even think about your fitness, then you're doing great in a vehicle, right? But yeah, it is. It's super true. And that's the one thing I love about racing four wheels is that on a dirt bike, like there was a difference. Like a man has more upper body strength than I'll ever have. I'm not built that. I'm a female. I'm built to carry a baby, right? So I have a stronger lower body, but like on a dirt bike, it's different. It's hard for us females to compete at the top male category because we don't have the same strength, and you need that, and you need that endurance. And so in a vehicle, you don't need that. You do, but we're equals. So it's like I can drive a car just as good as you can. And it's quite interesting because sometimes especially at like if we go to the Mint or Baja 500, 1000, whatever the case is, I always like was laughing at myself and me and Erica because like we're always the turtle the first 100 miles because it's a desert race. We have to think about the end, right? So I always kind of just play the turtle first 100 miles. Every other male usually sends it the first 100 miles. So me and Erica just kind of sit back and watch whatever's going to unfold. And it always happens at first 100 miles.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think right there, we're able to, maybe calm ourselves down a little bit where maybe they're so amped up and they're just testosteroned out. Like, let's go,
Totally.
like.
No, I 100%. I can readily admit that. Like the worst thing for me in racing is getting passed.
Yeah.
Somebody passes me, I lose my mind. You know what I mean? And I immediately want to take back the pass. And it makes no sense. It's just a tit for tat. It's not a good long-term strategy. It's like, let them go. You're going to see them in, 50 miles on the side of the road, 100%. Right? And I think there's a lot to be said for, the advantage of being a woman and not having that reaction, right? Of like, okay, it's a 400-mile race or it's a 600-mile race or whatever. And, winning the first 100 miles doesn't mean shit.
No.
But with men, like I know, like there's a lot of, I mean, with everybody, there's a lot of ego involved. But, it's interesting too, because you're part of a wave of women, you, Kristen Matlock, a few other women that, not only are racing, but you're performing at the highest level.
Yeah.
And I've seen this, and, I've seen you signing autographs for young girls, like at the Mint. What's that feel like for you?
I think that's super cool, and it's really awesome. I have a lot of actual dads that reach out to, like, thanks for being such a role model for my daughter. And then, the little girls coming up to me like, I raced because of you. Like, that's so cool, because that's what it's about. Like, I want to be able to encourage them and pave the way. Like, hey, listen, it won't be easy. No, but I did it, and I just kept going, and I kept pushing, even when I thought, like, is it possible? Well, let's see, I want it, so let's make it possible. And to see little girls coming up, there was two at the Mint this year, and I met them at the California 300, and they were like, you are the reason why I got into racing. I didn't know that I could do it, and seeing you, knew I could. And I was like, that is so cool. And then ever since, I stay in touch with them and try to help them. And, it's really cool because, like, Jeremy Gray was my navigator at Dakar, and his daughter, Sadie Gray, actually got into the car with me at the Nora 1000 randomly. She's only 16 years old, and we won Nora together. And it's like, it was awesome to see that. And then now she just won the Mint in the Pro NA UTV class. And I'm like, that's pretty rad. Like, to be with her first race when she won, and, like, be able to influence her and give her that confidence, and then now she's out there winning the Mint. Like, that's so cool to me.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful thing to be able to share with people.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's for us, for me as a promoter, to see the amount of women that are racing with us, both young girls and women, is really cool, because again, it's like this thing where, like, they can win.
Yeah.
And not just show up and be like, hey, we're here.
Yeah.
But, like, when you look at yourself and you look at at Kristen Matlock, like, you're coming for the win. It's not like, hey, it's the women's division. There is no women's division in off-road.
And there should never be.
Yeah, there won't be any.
There should never be a women's division in driving, to me.
There won't be. But we need you to get the overalls just to set that. You need to pull a full Michelle Maton and do some spanking, right?
Yeah.
Attention Off-Road Nation. The Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship comes roaring through Parker, Vegas, and Barstow in 2024. It's three of the most prestigious and competitive off-road races in the sport. It all starts with the return of the Parker 400 in beautiful Arizona, January 10th through the 14th. Then it's the biggest, baddest, most grueling off-road race on the planet. The BF Goodrich Tires Mint 400 comes roaring back into Sin City, Las Vegas, March 6th through the 10th. And finally, the climactic conclusion of the Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship. The California 300 returns to Barstow, October 2nd through the 6th. Visit unlimitedoffroadracing.com for complete details. The 2024 Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship is here.
No, I agree. And I think, that's one thing that I always stood for. And I think I always preach too, to, like, the little girls coming up and who are racing. It's, hey, it doesn't matter being a girl or a guy. When that helmet goes on, you're a racer. So do the best you can and be the best racer you can. And always strive to be the competition on the track. And then don't let any other talking do anything. Let the results do everything for you. And let that be what does the talking. And, I really preach by that. Like, work hard and just let the results do it, because, everyone's going to doubt you at some point, or you're going to gain a bunch of respect. But it all comes down to actually going for it on the track and putting in the hard work and letting it show.
Yeah. No, 100%. Back to Dakar for a minute, like, everybody sees your sponsors, and I think a lot of them assume, like, they just write these giant checks for you to do whatever you want. And that's not the case. It's extremely expensive and extremely difficult to get to Dakar as a privateer. Talk about that process and how much it costs to go do that.
Yeah.
That doesn't, I mean, it's one thing you're like, cool, I'm going to do it. You've done all this racing leading up to it, but then you're like, cool, how am I going to pay for it?
Yeah.
Right? How am I going to get it done?
Oh yeah, no, and I think it's tough as an American as well. Like, so when I really put the Dakar effort into effect, it was this last year. I just told myself, listen, I'm not sidetracking off and getting on any other opportunity this year. I am dedicating it. I'm going to Dakar. I am going to do everything I possibly can to get there. When I looked at the price tag, I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to get this money. You know, I had some hope in some big sponsors that maybe they would help me in bigger ways, but I didn't get that. And so I had a lot of people step up, and it cost me about $500,000. So to do my Dakar effort, I have to also go to Morocco the race before, because you're kind of, you know, if you're going to invest so much into one race, Dakar, you might as well go race the one before. That's kind of like the practice lead up to Dakar.
Sure.
And so, yeah, $500,000, and I raised about half of it. The other half I paid out of my pocket. So yeah, I didn't have to pay any taxes this year. So that was, you know, the only benefit from that.
We have a new tax evasion program. It's called racing, right?
Just go spend all your money racing. You won't have to pay taxes. No, but yeah, it was nerve wracking. I was scared to, you know, invest all that because that's my savings that I've saved up my entire life, you know, and then to go throw it at one event, that's scary. And, you know, I didn't know if I was going to be successful my first Dakar. And if I went there and didn't utilize it, I would have been pretty bummed. Like, yeah. For sure. It was a
huge risk.
A huge risk. And I was willing to take it on myself. And that's what I kind of like had to step back with is like these big sponsors that might have those big checks. Like, well, if I'm not willing to take my own risk on myself, then why should they? And you know, I had a lot of sponsors that did step up in big ways for them and help out. And, you know, I couldn't have done it without them. Like, I couldn't have forked out the $500,000 by myself. So, you know, I am grateful for so many sponsors. And, you know, BFG was the first one to step up for me. Like, that's pretty freaking awesome. Like, BFG has just gone really to great lengths to always show such support to me. And they are the tire over there and the support. And yeah, so that was pretty big because, you know, BFG doesn't need to necessarily pay anyone because they have the best product. Like, everyone's going to go buy their tires because they're the best. So, you know, for them to believe in me like that, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is cool. But you did most of the fundraising on your own.
Yeah, we had parties. I tried to get really creative with my website and do like, hey, want to ride with me? You know, donate, or you can buy the shirt and then you get a ticket to the party. Or like, I even did like bottle service at our party. That was pretty cool. And yeah, I try to just do anything and everything I possibly could to have everyone also be involved. And it was actually awesome because when I went to Dakar, you now had all these people who were a part of the fundraising process follow along. And they never even knew what Dakar was until I was going or trying to get there. Yeah,
it's pretty much crowdfunding.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is cool. Like I think that's a rad thing, and you know, props to every single person who supported you. But I also look at it, and you know, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. It's like it's time for Team America. You know, between you, Casey Curry, AJ. You know, Mitchie, like we have the deepest talent pool in the world of off-road racing, and we have more young kids coming up. So that's not going to slow down.
Yeah.
Now we need the corporations to step up and start supporting you guys. And, you know, whether it's the OEMs or, you know, the Polarises and the Can-Ams, like, I think it's time. I think that we're at that spot where, you know, it's been proven by Ricky. It's been proven by Casey. You just went and proved it, you know, completely on your own. Like, and I can't give you enough credit and respect for doing that. Cause it's like, it's one thing when you're part of a big team, you know, like your odds increase exponentially because of the amount of support that you have.
Yeah.
But when you're going there as a privateer and it's like, you know, you've had to cover everything, you know, for you to do as well as you did and to win a stage, like you should be very proud of that.
Thank you.
And I really hope that, all these corporations that make money off-road look at what you've done and they get behind you for the coming Dakars, right? Because, I'm kind of in a funny position where as a promoter, I can look at it two ways of like, oh, that's competition. I'd rather have that money be spent supporting us. But I think global competition is very important, and especially in off-road, because it's something that I believe that we're the best at.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of really good European racers that have raced and won Dakar over the years, but I think the future is ours. When I look at the talent pool that we have right now, kids starting at 6 years old with trophy carts and UTVs, and then growing to racing in Dakar, and doing what they're doing. Seth Quintero's a good example of it. I mean, I was his first sponsor with a UTV for racing as youth, and watching him do what he's done, and Seth and AJ, and on and on. I'm probably missing some people, but it's really interesting, and I really hope that the American corporations that are making money off any form of off-road, and I don't care if you're an oil company or a shop company or a parts company, it's like it's time to step up and start supporting our Americans to go over there and kick everybody else's ass, because we're capable of doing it.
Oh, 100%. And it's crazy. Like, Dakar and the world of motorsports in Europe is humongous. Like, you walk around as a Dakar athlete over there, somebody like Ricky going to Europe, right? He can't walk down the street, like, type of guy. Like, Dakar is that big there. And that's what, that's our football, basically, that's what Dakar is to them.
Right.
And you come to America and people are like, what is it again? We still are trying to educate people on it. And it was actually really cool. I had a sponsor come on, AO Coolers, and they're based out of Corona. And the owner, Brian, he's very passionate about Dakar. He's always been passionate about F1. But it's rare you find that, right? But we just had a party at AO, and he presented us the city of Corona, gave us special certificates, showing the appreciation for our accomplishments. And I just was like, that is awesome. And AOSP, congrats on Dakar, this huge party, he gets it. He knows what it's like, and he knows how big it is over there, and it's not here. And to have someone bring that to America and then everyone else see that, I'm like, that is so rad. And that's what we need more of.
100%.
We need more people investing in it and getting involved in it, and breathe, eat, do it, because it's a whole nother animal, and it is different. And I want our racing in America to be the football, and it's not there. You go to Baja and it is.
Sure.
I feel like that's the only place that American off-road is really the pinnacle sport. But you go to Brazil, they have soccer, right? And it's we need to make racing that.
Absolutely. And I think it's a big part of it is, the content and connectivity that Dakar has done a really good job of. And I think that too, having what's really important from us, for Americans, is to have, Americans to cheer for. Well, now we have that, AJ's won, Casey's won, Ricky's won, you've won a stage. We have that now. And so I don't know, I get a little passionate and self-righteous, and come on, guys, we got the people who can win. Let's support them.
Yeah.
And go over there and spank these guys, and show them, how capable American off-road athletes are. So
yeah, it is gnarly here. In off-road, I think we're used to tougher terrain. So it was kind of funny. I went to Morocco and they were saying how rough it was, and yeah, there's times it's rough. Square edge comes up out of nowhere or something, but I'm this isn't that rough. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like,
welcome to Narsto, guys.
yeah, I was like, what are they saying is rough? Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, you know? It was kind of like, oh, that, I guess it could be considered rough, but I was like, man, I'm just thinking like San Felipe, you're just looking down like 10 miles and you're like, oh, let's go through all those.
Yeah.
You know, it's
100%.
not the same. They don't have whoops out there.
No.
That is the difference.
I always use stupid analogies to describe stuff, right? And it's like, you know, rally raid, that discipline of off-road, which Dakar is really like jazz, right? It's refined, it's detailed, it's long, right? And American off-road is like Metallica, they're like metal, right?
Yeah.
It's wild and crazy and undeniable, and even if you don't like it, you're wrapped up in it going, holy shit.
Yeah.
Right? So, but I think, you know, both disciplines have value, you know, like I went to Dakar in Peru. I went to Dakar in Saudi. I want to go back, you know, and see it again, watch it develop. You know, I enjoy the process, and you know, I think, you know, it becomes a much more mental version of off-road racing because you're not given a GPS file. You have to think and use a road book, and you know, and for you have a navigator that you absolutely trust because. Yeah. You know, if not, you're just doing loops around Saudi, you know?
Yeah. It's just so different, you know, like you have to, there's so much more that goes into rally than just off-road because you have the strategy so much more in depth. Like you have to be ahead of the game. Like there's just the rules are one thing, like off the track is another thing, you know, like having the right car, the right mechanic, like I had Mitch Ossup go there who builds my cars here. He was my mechanic in Dakar. And like, that was one less thing off my shoulders because I trust him so much and he's so talented at what he does that I don't have to worry about the car now. I can put that on Mitch. And then I brought Cynthia who like, she always helps me and she goes to the races and strategizes with everything I do pretty much, like from the media to the racing side. And so then that was another thing I could take off my chest, you know? So it's like, all these little things that you have to create a huge team, like in order to like be able to be focused on just being the athlete there because it takes so much to do that well.
Well, Alsop I thought was very smart because, you know, it is competition, right? And there's a lot of fuckery, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you need somebody who's watching, you know, the prep and maintenance of your vehicle and, you know, just all the different strategies that are being played in the bivouac and so on and so forth. And then Cynthia, who she's a doll. It's so funny because every time I meet her, she reintroduces herself like I've never met her before. But I appreciate it, right? So yeah, it is a team effort. It's just like it was funny in talking to Ricky. It's like. I know Ricky, and I obviously, you know, I know the support that he has, you know, and when you understand that, you know, going to Dakar with somebody who's mentored you, right? Yeah. Like Johnny.
Yeah.
And going like, this is like, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi's going into a fight and he's got Yoda with him. Yeah. Going, all right, here's what we're going to do, right? Yeah. And I mean, that's an incredibly valuable, you know, tool. Now Johnny's probably going to be like, wait, I'm Yoda?
No, even Johnny, like, it was funny because when me and Ricky started dating, he goes, well, looks like I got another one. I was like, sweet. I was like, you could take me under your wing, Johnny. That'd be great. But at Dakar, he was always checking in with me and, you know, Monster Joe's there checking in with me. And it was awesome to have that support and that knowledge, you know, I think that's key. And, you know, me and Ricky too, like me and Ricky would talk almost every night. But I would be getting in like when he's going to bed. So it's not like we hung out. But and everyone keeps asking that, which is super funny. And like, we didn't go there to hang out. We went there to go race Dakar. Right. But we didn't win the same stage. So that was pretty cool. We got to celebrate that together and he got to be there for that. But yeah, it's cool like to lean on them and like have that support, you know, and we always laugh because our programs are so different because like he's a paid rider, right? So like he works with Johnny on the strategy and the mental side, but his job is to be the athlete and be ready on that dirt bike. Right. And the rest of it's kind of taken care of. And then for me, I got all of it, like I have to do the logistics, the flights. I got to make sure I got the right people, the parts, and then I have to still be the driver.
Right.
It's like there's a lot more to the puzzle. And so, sometimes he looks at my program and I think he's like a little overwhelmed at how much it really takes on the other side of things that, a big team might handle for you.
Sure.
And I think he appreciates his job a little better sometimes because of it. But
it's interesting too, because like obviously sport UTVs are only about 10 years old, right? So I would hope that as as these corporations sell more and more of these things, that there's more effort put into the race programs, right? And I would assume that there is, right? Then they see the value of it, so that they can storytell and show people how. Look, I was one of the first people to wave the UTV flag and go like, look, people. This is a game changer. Like you can go to a dealership and buy this incredibly capable off-road vehicle and just have more fun per dollar than any other vehicle that I've ever driven, street or dirt. And then when you get in the racing side of it and you're like, look, like basically you cage it and then you could come race pro stock.
Yeah.
Like that's incredible. I mean, you're only talking about between $5,000 and $7,000 in upgrades.
Yeah.
And you can actually come out and race. And that same car can be your play car, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that's a paradigm shift that I think is still just beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that as more money becomes involved in that, you'll see those programs grow and, more investment go into them. I think we're just at the early stages of it because, I remember going to Peru and meeting up with the South Racing guys, and they had just barely started with UTVs, and they're like, yeah, we're not sure about these things, and and we can't really get any support from any of the manufacturers. And I immediately went back to Polaris. I'm like, you guys, you got to sponsor these guys. Just give these guys cars. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, Can-Am did.
Fortunately.
And now, they've been dominant, right?
Yeah.
And sure, Can-Am has a great vehicle platform, but Scott and his team from South, it's like they know what they're doing. That's racecraft. That's race knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, again, it's interesting to watch the whole thing develop, and to see, the American stars rise, the AJ Jones and the Casey Currys and Mitch Guthrie Jr. and Seth Quintero and you, right?
Yeah.
And Ricky, obviously. I mean, it's a really cool thing to see and be a part of. And, like I said before, it's time for the American corporations to get off their ass, start writing some checks and, supporting the Americans to go over there. Cause, I think it's important, I think that it's not that we need validation for American off-road racing, but I think that it also validates the level of racecraft that we have, right?
Yeah.
And again, there's generations of these kids coming up, that should be able to follow in your footsteps, and everybody else's. So
I think it's right now, like I'm kind of going to Dakar at a perfect time because things are starting to change. I think people are starting to pay attention to it. I think money has a great opportunity to be involved more in it. Just like my social insights, not even social, but just in general, like my impressions and impact from just Dakar, one race, was 10 times more than I've gotten out of anything I've ever done. Sure. It's unbelievable. I'm like 10 times, like maybe even 50 times if I'm really thinking about it, because it was like, it was nuts. It's in the billions of impressions. Like, what? You get that from one race, but then you think about it, you're racing every day, so you're getting so much.
But one thing for people to understand, and it's one of the things, that's a problem with the way that we view things as Americans, is we're just like, is it in America? No, okay. You know what I mean? And that's, if you look at what just happened with F1, with them being able to crack the code of bringing a European motorsport to America, I mean, that's a pretty big paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And what that shows is that it is possible, right? And so I would hope that even European brands would be looking at, that investment going, okay, well, here's Sarah Price, an American. Where are the other Americans? Let's invest in them as a gateway to get into the American market, right? Because if there's any European brands, foreign brands
Yeah.
out there listening, we will buy your product if you support our people, 100%.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we get introduced to everything.
Yeah.
Is we see it on our athletes and our racers, and we're like, what's that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting because I think that the success of Formula One is opening up a lot of opportunities in other motorsports,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to that. Even honestly, as a promoter, like we're stoked because we're like, hey, Formula One is pushing the financial limits of companies, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And you can you could title sponsor us, for the catering budget. Let's just say.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. I think, it's nuts anymore. Like to even think about, like F1 money, like that's just crazy to me.
But it's interesting because when you look at it from an economic standpoint, like again, F1 has done a tremendous job, and they definitely are selling Ferraris and Mercedes and oil and all the things that support them. That it definitely is working and having an impact. But when you look at America and you go, what do we drive? We drive trucks,
Yeah.
right? And we drive UTVs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, every farm in America has a UTV on it, right?
Yeah.
So you start connecting those dots and you go, okay, well, what does Sarah Price winning Dakar do? Well, it does a lot. It's going to sell a lot.
Yeah. And you want to know something? I've been working a lot with Tread Lightly the last 2 years, and I adore what they do because they keeps our deserts alive. It keeps everyone educated to keep them open. And we are the only people in the world that have recreational areas to go drive in the dirt and in the off-road and have all this cool terrain at our disposal to go have fun in. Like, the rest of the world does not have that. Like, I don't know where these other drivers in Dakar are actually like getting to drive at because they don't have the opportunities we do.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky. And I don't think everyone understands that until like, I didn't even understand it till I started traveling the world the last few years and racing and then realizing that like, well, where do you even like practice and drive at? Like, you just race every weekend and that's how you get your seat time? And they're like, yeah, pretty much. I'm like, that's expensive. And they have all these really like the FIA, and when you have the FIA involved, like, yeah, they're very strict on everything. You have to build a car to a spec. You have to get it crash tested and all these things to get anything passed. Like, it's expensive. So when they're just racing on the weekends to go and get seat time, I'm like, that blows me away because of the amount of money it costs.
Yeah.
And we just go to Glamis right down the road, wherever we can go, and we can go rip up in the freaking Can-Am anytime I want. And it's freedom.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. And they all look at America like, like almost like, oh man, I wish I had that. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like, anyone I talked to over there, when I met them, they're like, I want to come to America and race. And then they all want to know, like, what are the steps? Just get a car. Like, hey.
There's no licensing.
Yeah. I was like, me and Mitch will rent you a car. Like, come out, race with us. Like, we'll put you in one. We'll take care of you, And they're like, okay, well, what do I need to, like, qualify for anything? Nope, nothing.
Yeah.
You need nothing. Just show up.
Yeah.
Like,
It's funny because, like, anytime anybody complains to me about something, I'm like, you should go try and apply for your FIA license, see what that costs and see what that process is like. But to your point, I think, and Tread Lightly is a big thing for me. I sit on the board and, our unlimited off-road racing organization has cleaned more desert than any other organization in the United States, probably in the world at this point. And we're going to continue to do that because we think that part of being a good steward is our freedom, right? And keeping those lands open, and not just for us, but for future generations. I mean, I've personally been very fortunate growing up in this culture and growing up going to Ocotillo and Glamis and Baja and, I mean, China, the the Inner Mongolia, like all over the world off-roading and, continue to do so. But I also understand that like freedom's not free. We have to put in a little bit of work and, maintain our public lands and keep them open. So Tread Lightly's fantastic organization. Matt Caldwell there has really supercharged it and done a lot. I was just out in Moab, and they were there doing work on trails while I was screwing around driving trails. So, but it's an important thing. So
yeah, it is for sure, and it's awesome that we have that, and it's like only here you can find it, and it's just like to be a part of it and to keep it open. So guys, clean up your stuff. When you go pack it in, pack it out.
Yes,
and it's like wear your helmet. Let's not have accidents happen, because then they can point the finger and be like, look at, someone got hurt.
Yep.
It's like, just, have your wits about you and just have a common sense.
Etiquette. Yep.
Yeah. It's just, it helps all of us because we want to be able to enjoy it. Because, I wasn't even like a month old and I was in Glamis, like I wouldn't sleep. I still don't sleep till this day. My brain is always 100 miles an hour. But my parents just put me in the car seat and then drove me around in the Jeep all night and would take turns. So I could
best babysitter in the world right there.
But that's Glamis. That's the life I want to keep like other people growing up in too. So yeah, it's been pretty cool. But Saudi Arabia is pretty open desert. I have to say that was the only other place I really seen that it's very
massive.
Yeah, massive. Yeah, like dude, the empty quarter. I remember like it's crazy, the 48-hour stage, we're going through the empty quarter, and the empty quarter is thousands of miles of dunes, right? I never really realized that, even though I just stayed 2 days in the dunes. Like we had to stay in an actual tent. Like I slept in my race suit one night out in the middle of the dunes. And we get on a plane after we finish that 48-hour stage, and we're taking off like in the middle of nowhere, this random airstrip in between all these big old dunes. And like when I say big dunes, like they're like walls that are like 5 times bigger than any dune I've ever seen in America.
Yeah.
Like and then they go down to this like lake bed that's flat. So it's like this crazy transition. You're trying to get momentum just to make it up. But we got on this plane, and I just remember like looking in every direction, and I couldn't see one thing but dunes. And I just like, it was the wildest thing to me. And not only are you in your race suit on a plane going from somewhere over dunes that you just raced in for 2 days to go to another bivouac, it was just a wild experience. But yeah, the empty quarter to me was pretty gnarly. And some people stay the night out there, I think 2 nights.
It is the gnarliest place on the planet, basically. Yeah. Hence the name, the empty quarter.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually really familiar with it because we were going to do a set a world record there with Polaris and, back in the day, and Scanlon greenlit it. And then, of course, the lawyers got a hold of it, and they're like, no way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's just do it,
Yeah.
But, that was one thing that when I did go to Saudi that was impressive is the scale. Like I'd been to other parts of the Middle East and seen like, some big dunes and China and such. But then when you get to Saudi and you're going down these canyons, it's like Matomi Wash, but it's 10 times as big.
Yep.
And you're like, wow. Right. So like the scale of Saudi was really impressive. You're no longer in the Baja Peninsula that you can walk across in a day. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, here we go. And it was a little, to be honest, like, I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt a little freaked out, a little nerve wracked because, I'm so comfortable with the environments that I grew up in, racing and recreating in. I can look at it and go, oh, like worst case scenario, I'm a 1 or 2 day walk out, right? Whereas you're in Saudi and you're not going to make it out of there, man. If you don't have support, if you don't have, everything you need, it's like you're toast.
Dude, it was at the empty quarter. There's people like blew up the cars or whatever happened, they broke, rolled. They were seriously like stranded out there for 2 days. And it wasn't because of lack of the organization trying. It just, they can't get to them any faster. So they have the helicopter come in and make sure that they have water and rations, but they had to sleep out there, some of them for sure. Like they were out there and there was no coming back and there's nowhere you can go or even attempt to try to go to get anywhere closer. So you just stay where you are and that's the best case you can do.
Yeah, people don't understand, like the logistics of this stuff is like most helicopters only have a few hour range and then they've got to land. So do the math and you're like, okay, that's 200 miles, tops, right?
Yeah.
So maybe 300 miles. So then it's like, oh, okay, well then how do you refuel them?
Yeah.
In the empty quarter where there's no infrastructure.
Yeah.
So then you have to figure out how to get fuel to those locations. It turns into this game of like, how far can you carry fuel and water in order to go further? We were working on a race in China and Inner Mongolia, and like, that's what we were working on fuel transport, right? Fuel and water transport, and the only thing that was viable for the distances that we were covering was doing it on camels.
Oh my god!
Right, so loading 55-gallon drums on
a camel
to take it a few hundred miles and then go like, okay, cool, we can get, 600 miles there. And then that's where the dudes and the camels are going to meet us with the water because we'll be out of water by that point.
And your camel needs water.
Right. And then, and then fuel. And it was just hilarious because the process of me trying to ask all these people, well, how do you, and we're thinking in our American terms of infrastructure and like, oh, the truck pulls up and they're like, no, dude, because if you load a truck with fuel, the truck has to use the fuel. So it has a distance that it can go. That's a limiter, right? So it's when you get into those large scale, especially the deserts, you're like, oh, okay, this is not a game of like just drive across the desert like we have here.
Yeah.
And there's a gas station.
No.
It's a whole nother thing.
Can you imagine that picture? Just VP, 55-gallon, just gas drums just on camels walking across the desert.
I guarantee you it'll happen. But that's rad. Well, thank you for coming in. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.